Today, if a faculty working in private university, if he gets an opportunity in a public university, he goes to the public university. Why? Because it is at the back of mind that public university is the destination. Further, why so? Is it so for scholarship? No, not necessarily so. It is not that when a person joins a public university, he is joining it for improving his scholarship, his status as a scholar. Not necessarily. But then the reason is, what is the reason? Reason is job security. A person feels that if I am joining a public university, my job is secure. I shall very well retire from the public university. Number two, good salary with allowances and regular increments, regular annual increments. See, this package, the salary, the allowances, it's all uniform amongst all universities in a state, or all universities of the central government, that is central universities. So one feels more confident. Uncertainty is not there. So preference goes to public university over the private university. On the other hand, in private universities, the salary structure is very diverse. On one hand, there are universities where package is very good. On the other hand, package may not be very attractive. There are universities where package may be very attractive at the senior level, that means at the level of professor, full professor, but not at the beginning level. So the diversity, in other words, is very much prominent, very much significant. Even service conditions are diverse in the case of a private university. In public universities, on the other hand, now next point, in public universities, the individual accountability is not very high. If a faculty has not been able to take a class, fine, he will engage later on, or he could not do it, okay. Whereas it may not happen in a private university because he will be accountable. Why a class has not been held? Not only in a classes. This is an example. You can take the example of admissions. In public universities, if admissions are less, fine, what can we do about it? But in private university, even an individual faculty or the director is asked why admissions are less. So accountability at individual level is very high in the case of private universities, whereas in the case of public universities, it's comparatively less. Further on, faculty development in the case of public university is not a priority. It is not a priority. Whereas even in private universities, it is not a priority. See, right now, I am not differentiating between within the category. That means, say, within public universities, there are some very good universities and others are not that good. Similarly, in private universities, there are certain very good universities, others are not that well. So I'm not comparing them right now. In general, this is the picture. Curriculum is not dynamic in the case of public university. So once a curriculum has been set, syllabus has been prescribed, it goes on for years. Whereas in the case of a private university or a private institutions, comparatively, it is dynamic. It may change. I will give you an example. As I said, as I mentioned in the beginning, I've been going as a peer review team member or chairman across the country, as a nominee of National Board of Accreditation or even NAC. One example, a few years back, there is a private institution, management institution, affiliated to a state public university. In their case, in master's degree, which was awarded by the state private university, we gave lesser points in comparison to another program that this institution was running as an autonomous program, say postgraduate diploma in business administration. Why? What was the reason? Reason was, when we saw the syllabus, when we saw the curriculum, we found that the state private university, state public university with which this institution was affiliated University had not changed the curriculum and syllabus for 18 years. It was a shock. 18 years, it was not changed. Whereas in this autonomous program run by the same college, syllabus was changed every second year. So it was more dynamic. The people from industry were involved in upgrading the syllabus. So we had no option. We gave more points to the autonomous degree. So it was the accreditation by NDA, National Board of Accreditation, which accredits the program. So they got more points for the autonomous program in comparison to the degree awarded by the state public university with which it was affiliated. So this is the distinction. Now we are having some good private universities in the country. There again, it's very dynamic. The syllabus, the curricula are changed from time to time. They move with the times. So this is another distinction. Now coming to assessments. You see, fortunately or unfortunately, but this is a fact. In public universities, when we assess for accreditation or for any purpose, we begin with trust and sympathy. See, if something is not there, well, what can they do? Government has not provided the grant. So department is not to be blamed, or the university is not to be blamed. They don't have money. So trust is there. Otherwise, they are fine. Is there. They can't do anything what to do. Whereas in a private university, assessment begins with distrust. If they have not provided this, yes, something is wrong. Maybe they are there for profiteering. They are earning money by admitting large number of students and not taking care of the basic needs of the students. So this is a distinction. Unfortunate, but it's a fact today that in the case of public universities, we start with trust and sympathy, whereas in a private university, we start with an element of doubt, distrust. Yes, something must be wrong. Maybe they want to earn money out of it. So profiteering is there. Even in the case of funding agencies, when a research proposal goes to a funding agency, preference goes to the public university. Say even because I have been on various panels, even when the two proposals are almost the same, almost at par in terms of merit, but priority goes to the public university. With the result, the research that could have been done in a private university, that doesn't happen because that funding, that support is not happening. Further, see, I would say that in every organization, all of us know, and educational institutions are not an exception. All people working in an institution can be divided, classified into 4 categories. 1, stars. 2nd, work horses. 3rd, passengers. And 4th, deadwoods. These are 4 categories of people working in an institution. In a public university, you would see stars are there. There are some great scholars, no doubt. Similarly, workhorses. Workhorses are those who keep on working. Give them any task, they would never say no. They would do it. Then 3rd, passengers at the same time are in very large number in a public university. That means those who only criticize, they don't do any work, just simply there, they get full salary, just they are carrying on till they retire. 4th category, deadwoods are also there. Deadwoods means those you say anything, you try to motivate, you give any incentive, nothing is going to happen. They are not going to contribute. They will be there. So these 2 categories, passengers and deadwoods, would continue there in the public university till they retire. So they are in a way a liability for the institution. Whereas in private universities, stars are there. Sometimes they attract good stars. They attract stars from public universities. They are not. Say, I am an example. I was a professor in a national university, NITI, but I decided to move into private sector 25 years back. So there are many such examples. Stars are there. They keep on working, irrespective of whether there is any extrinsic motivation or not. They will keep on working. 2nd, workhorses. They are also there. They are in, say, stars and workhorses are in both public universities, private universities, and they are the jewels of the institution. But at the same time, now see the distinction. Distinction is in terms of passengers and deadwoods. In the private sector, in the private universities, some good private universities, passengers are asked to leave at an appropriate time, though they don't continue till they retire. Whereas in public universities, they will continue. They are there. Nobody can do anything. They will retire till they retire. Same thing in the case of deadwoods. If somebody is not performing, not contributing, such deadwoods are also asked to leave in the case of a private university, but not in the case of a public university. So that's why in the case of a public university, many people feel discouraged, even if they have done a great job. But then at the same time, they find that they are equally treated. Whether you are a passenger or a star, you are treated equally. So there is a kind of demotivation in the case of stars and even workhorses. This is the current situation broadly. Now let us talk about the future. What is going to happen so far as the public universities and private universities are concerned? You see, as all of you know, that in National Education Policy 2020 has been introduced after it has come after 34 years, and this policy is going to make wonders. Many things will change. It will change the face of higher education in India completely in the next 14 years now, because by 2035 the whole national education policy will be implemented. And this national education policy has many positive points in it. And as we start implementing various provisions gradually, we'll see the change, and scenario will definitely change in Indian context so far as higher education is concerned. Now, all the institutions, see, I will not go back to what is already existing, because Mr. Goel has already explained in detail that how many universities we have, how many colleges we have. So I will not repeat that. But in future, all institutions will be classified into just 3 categories. Today we have even universities, there are so many categories. Mr. Goel has already mentioned deemed university, open universities, state universities, central universities, and so on. But now in the future, only 3 types of institutions will be there. 1, research intensive universities. 2, teaching universities. 3, autonomous degree granting colleges. These 3 categories are going to remain. These 3 categories we will be seeing, say, by next 15 years, say by 2035, 14 years from now. So faculty development is going to be priority, irrespective of whether public university or private university. Secondly, research will be again a priority now, and a national research foundation is being created under this implementation of National Education Policy 2020. Separate body is being created, National Research Foundation, which will fund all the institutions in higher education, irrespective of whether they are public or private. So a level playing field will be given. So that will certainly increase the opportunity to do quality research. You see, as we know, when it comes to world ranking of universities, we are now nowhere in even top 200. But then one of the reasons why, because our research becomes a casualty. But it is hope. The hope is that over the period of time, when equal opportunity is given to good private universities, good public universities, quality of research will definitely improve. Further, curriculum is going to be very organic and dynamic in nature in the future when this implementation will happen. Senior faculty shall mentor. See, this is new phenomenon. Senior faculty shall mentor new entrants. It has not been so far. So far, there are many entrants who come because they land up in education because they could not fulfill their ambition in some other discipline. So they land up as teachers. But this is not going to, the respectability of this profession will go up. And formally, a mentoring system is being created, wherein senior faculty will mentor the young faculty to tell them what you are supposed to do. You see, today, when there is a young entrant, he does not know how to set a question paper. He does not know how to handle the class. So he learns by virtue of experience, by trial and error. But now, during the times to come, this mentoring system is going to come for, as I said, formally. So young entrant will get opportunity to learn from the seasoned people, seasoned teachers, that what are they expected to do, how they should handle students in the class, how should they handle the questions, and so forth. So in other words, in a way, the distinction between public universities and private universities is going to reduce. So to my mind, during the times to come, the distinction will be very clear, not in terms of public university, private university, what we are discussing today. The distinction will be between good universities and not so good universities. You see, experience of a person will be valued during the times to come as per this national education policy. How today, if a person is not having prescribed qualification, prescribed experience, he cannot be taken at, say, somebody from industry who must have maybe he has invested 20 years, 30 years on senior position, he is working at present on senior position, and he wants to shift to the education. He cannot be, he is not taken as professor in a university system. No, you are not eligible. We can take you as a adjunct, as a guest faculty, as a special teacher. You may have special sessions, but we cannot take you as a full-time full professor, because the prescribed norms are not like that. But during the times to come now, the criteria will be, we can engage practice professors. That means those who are practicing. Say, for example, if I am teaching art, I am teaching music in my university, I am teaching, say, fine art in my university, and I want to engage a person who is a man of practice, well-known, eminent musician. Today, I cannot take him as a professor because he is not PhD. But now, when with this concept of practice professors will be implemented in our Indian universities, I can take him as a practice professor. I may not ask for PhD, but yes, his experience, his eminence will be valued. Similarly, we'll be having research professors now. So far, it was not the norm. We used to have only teaching professors, but now there will be research professors also, those who will be dedicating those who have dedicated their life to research. So in research intensive universities, these research professors will there will be great opportunity for them to contribute. So the whole education system shall become student-centered. This is another aspect. So far, we have been saying student-centeredness has been there, but in certain disciplines, like management. We have been talking in management, there are certain things we see what national education policy says now. We have already been practicing them in management discipline for a long time. Mohan would agree with me because he has also been professor of management for a long time. So we have been doing it. But now national education policy says no, it should be for across the disciplines. So all the disciplines must they should make it student centered, give more opportunity to student to participate in the class, ask questions, and the whole thing should center around the student. So more discussion orientation. This is going to happen now across disciplines, not restricting it to management or business administration. It will happen across the disciplines. Students will have more flexibility now under this multiple entry, multiple exit, that the student has choice. If he feels that the quality of education is not really good in an institution where he is studying, he can shift to other institution easily under multiple entry, multiple exit provision of this national education policy 2020. So flexibility is there. Therefore, in other words, more challenge for the educational institutions, irrespective of public or private, more challenge to retain good students. So we have to offer quality education. We have to give a feel of excellence to the students so that they stay on. If we are not taking this challenge, if we are not offering the education of excellence and quality, students will go to other institutions. As I said, I repeat, irrespective of public or private status. Similarly, what efforts or time student has invested in education, that will be valued, which was not so far there. For example, a student of BTech, say engineering student, if something happens in his life, after 2 years he has to leave. He would not get anything today. He has lost 2 years. But tomorrow, when this national education policy will be implemented, he will not lose it. Will be academic bank of credits. So ABC. In academic bank of credits, these whatever credits he has earned in say 2 years, they will be deposited in ABC, on the national depository, and after some while, when everything normalizes in his life, he can claim admission in third year. May not be necessarily the same institution. He may go to another institution. He has a choice. So this is a new phenomenon. This was not so in our country so far. The distinction between public and private universities, as I said earlier, is going to reduce. It's going to minimize. So more important distinction will be quality, not whether it is a public or private university. Merit will be given priority. So emphasis on merit is going to increase. Same way, funding for research will be given on merit, not whether it is a public university or a private university. In other words, there will be a level playing field for both public and private universities during the times to come. I would like to conclude with a statement that higher education in India has a great and very bright future during the times to come. Thank you very much.
Very great and bright future of higher education in India, says Dr. Upinder Dhar. Very forcibly, he has put his words, and he says that the time is coming when there will be distinction between private and public universities will be less. But few points which I would like to highlight, which he has mentioned, is first is he says that we were joining, earlier the educators were joining public universities as a final destination, while the private university was an alternative. And he has explained why it is. And he has also mentioned that because in public universities, there is no accountability of any individual, while in the private, it's the accountability is always there. So he says that's why the private universities is standard-wise better than the public universities. He also mentioned that the curriculum is dynamic and in the private, which is not in the public universities, which can carry on years and years the same curriculum. And he has also mentioned that trust and more finance are in public universities than the private universities, because the media reports or the public perception is that they might be the fly-by-night operator of this private university. They may be there, they are today, they might not be there tomorrow, but a public university will always be there. And he has very strategically, he says there are 4 categories. He says stars, workforce, passengers, and deadwoods. And he has explained everything. According to him, the NEP, the National Education Policy 2020, is the game changer for the country, the education in India, because according to him, it will be the future is for research, based on the teachers and autonomous. So all these things, he says that now, because of the NEP, it will be all the universities across, whether it's a public or private, will be the standard of education will be far better, and the advantage will go to the students because it will be a student-centric education. And because he has also mentioned all the good things of NEP. Now, because he has to go, so I have to ask one question to him, because he has touched about NEP as well as he has mentioned about the research. My question to you, Dr. Dhar, is several studies of publication trends have shown that India's share in the world research output hovers around 5%. But the rate of citations, the number of times these articles are cited and used as proxy for quality is much lower at 2 to 3%. Now, this is the reality of Indian education today, the research. And when you are saying that we are, the NEP is saying about the new research institute, it will going to start the functioning, etc. We have seen what happened to Skill India mission, how miserably it failed in India. I have done the programs on NEP, several programs. And the only question which everyone is asking, whether it is implementable or not, because the budget which they have shown is about 6% of the GDP, while in this budget also, I think it is very, very less. So when this is the situation, because in India, the education till now is the least priority. Now NEP is there, but it is a futuristic thing. And you have also mentioned that the seniors will going to mentor the young teachers. We had done a program. I don't know whether Professor Agarwal was there or not. Somebody says that today young persons who are going to come and train the teachers, because they are trained to teach train the teachers. They are not trained to teach the biology or a particular subject, but they are young. And the seniors are objecting. They says, I have done PhD 30 years back. How come a new MBA can train me? So all those problems with the diversities in India, do you think what you have made a statement, the future of education in India is very bright and there will be less distinction, you still owed it? Or you think what I have mentioned to you with the facts, they also stand somewhere? Dr. Dhar, please.
I will reply it in two parts. One part is so far as the mentoring system is concerned. As I mentioned, senior people will be mentoring the youngsters, but there is a caution. Since I was in the committee which has formed the regulation, senior people does not mean anyone. There are criteria. We have prescribed the criteria for those who can become mentors. That is in terms of their citations, in terms of their research, in terms of their contributions to the profession and so on and so forth. So simply being a full professor or simply being a retired professor will not work. So there is criteria for selecting the senior, these mentors who can mentor the youngsters. This is one part. Second part, so far as research is concerned, as I mentioned in the beginning also, when it comes to world ranking of universities, one of the casualties is research in our case. So with that intention, with this keeping in mind, National Research Foundation is being created to fund research in the country, to encourage research, quality research not for the sake of research, quality research, which can be recognized, which can be cited across the world, irrespective of the status, whether one is a public university or a private university. That is what is going to make the change. Now coming to 6% of the GDP. Unfortunately, when this policy came, pandemic also came. That was very unfortunate. So therefore, a lot of money, a lot of funds had to be diverted to health and also for revival of the industry, because industry there were a lot of disruptions across the country, across the world, but our country also, there were disruptions so far as the industry is concerned, and then healthcare structure, it was seen as an add-on. But now, as per the NEP 2020, it is not going to be add-on. It is going to be an integral part of mainstream education. So it will be in my mainstream education. Every student has to earn credits for the skill-based courses also. So therefore, I'm very optimistic that is going to be successful and help us in imparting holistic education for the overall development of the students. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dhar. Only one point I will add. What you are saying is right, that one has to be very optimistic. But this National Education Policy 2020 was released on 29th-30th of July 2020, much after the pandemic hit India. Our first Janta curfew was on 22nd March 2020. So why we were in hurry when we were knowing that the pandemic has already done a casualty in our finances? We should have not introduced. And 1 year later, it was gazetted, officially released by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, on 30th of July 2021. And still there is no hope of revival of the economy the way you are talking. But let's hope for the best. Thank you very much, Dr. Dhar. I know you have lots of commitment. So thank you very much. Next time, whenever we will be connecting again, I will have more discussions on the education, because the education is a very, very important topic. It has to be very, very important topic. It should be discussed. But unfortunately, in India, the finance is more important than the education. And we forget one thing, finance will not come if the people are not properly educated. Thank you very much, Dr. Dhar. Now, I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he is Mr. Kamal Puri. Mr. Kamal Puri is the chairman of Skyline International Group and Skyline University College, Sharjah, UAE. Mr. Puri is an entrepreneur, educationalist, and a visionary. He has recently established Skyline University, Nigeria. He is instrumental in establishing various social and business clubs in UAE and has been awarded with Achiever Award and NRI of the Year Award. Welcome, Mr. Kamal Puri, on our show. Mr. Kamal Puri, you have heard what Professor Dr. Upinder Dhar has spoken, and he's very positive. And one has to be positive. After all, it's the future of the country, future of the students, young children. But we would like to know, although the topic is a bit different, but let's go on the topic only, private versus public universities, because you being a private university entrepreneur, you have established your own self, the private university, and you might have seen, although it is not in India, abroad, but you might be having fair idea about Indian private and public universities also. So we would like to know from you, the private versus public universities. Mr. Kamal Puri, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel, and thanks for giving me opportunity. Dr. Dhar, I appreciate you have covered the whole scenario. Nothing is left for me to talk, but let me give you my practical examples. 1986, I gave a seminar in India, and I said, education is my business. Everybody jumped from the seat. They said, education cannot be a business. I try to justify by saying that when your kid goes to 5-star hotel, he or she spends this much money. When he goes to Delhi University, whatever the fees I left 50 years back, it is the same or little changes. We are the people, those who built up the nation. Faculty should be paid the highest. Why? Because every student listens to two personality, one to father or mother, as well as to the teacher. The question is, many government officials, even the ministers, have visited a number of times in UAE from 1990. My voice was very loud. Allow private institution to come to India. Reason is, you want to give scholarship, put condition to every institution that this percentage scholarship will be there for poor students, coupon scheme. Especially in 21st century, education has completely changed. When we are talking about skills, vocational to academics, in 86, when I introduced my first program, 20% of the curriculum was based on skill-based, 80% of the curriculum was based on academic part. It was very, very difficult because I was operating British American education system. Very difficult to convince them. They said these two cannot be merged because there are polytechnic or there are universities. There are community colleges or there are universities. But anyway, we did. What advantage we got? My placement rate was 99% because of vocational courses linked with academic. We were the first institution in the world to do that. When I look to the present scenario, what is happening? There is one is called information, converting information into knowledge and application of knowledge. Today, student is getting information through Google, through YouTube, through all the technology. When you see all this information is coming, it is up to student or a mentor to guide him which one is to be converted into knowledge and which knowledge is to be applied. Now, especially after COVID, there are two words. One is a virtual world and second is the physical world. Bricks and clicks are taking over at a fast pace. Now, what will happen to higher education? In higher education, one size will not fit to all. When you go to Subway, you give your preference. I want this type of sandwich. I want these type of ingredients, etc. Similar thing is going to happen in education. Student may pick up a physics course, he may pick up a business course, or he may pick up another course, or he may pick up certain courses in X university, and he will pick up Y courses in different universities, wherever the strength would be. So one size is not going to work. How the university system will operate all around the world, and it will happen even in India. There will be three parties involved in education system. Number one, content producer. Number two, technology company. Number three, brand. These three will create education system. And time will come where student will ask why I should sit for 4 years on one seat to have one degree. For what? Today, we are going to have many competitors like Microsoft, Google, right? Or IBM, all are coming with their own institution, their own training center, their own way of teaching. So what will happen? Dr. Dhar has said very correctly, in UAE, like we cannot recruit anybody less than top 200 university. Our accredited agency, even for undergraduate, I have to have a PhD person to teach even undergraduate. Their emphasis is not that what research you carry. The question is whether the research, there is a rating of A, B, C. Which journal are you publishing? Now, teaching is also become a case basis. Now, the maximum emphasis on research and academics. Accredited agencies, to make it sure, starting from the governance, management, missions to curriculum, to talking about learning support resources, risk management, finance, and all these aspects are being monitored. And on the basis of that, giving facility to the student to choose whatever program they want to pick up. Now, today the world is flat and India is at takeoff. Not only education part of it, economics part of it. Because geopolitical situations are changing. When we look to China, China closed their private education system of online. And now we have a role model and case study. Take an example of Baiju. What is happening? You are using technology as your assistant. So when we look into that, future of education is going to be the blended mode. It is not going to be 100% on online. Because if it is 100% online, there are two aspects we develop in university. One is the intellectual aspect, second is the social development. Now, in case if any institution wants to be a transactional, having a profit as a motive only, then transformation will not take place. So it is very, very important for all regulators to control these institutions, but give them autonomy. Let them run the way they want to run. Because now, top blue chips company, they may not give importance to the degrees. Reasons? Because they always emphasize on creativity and innovation. We established the Innovation Lab 6 years back. We started online education in '98. We have established Future Digital Center because of future skills. So when I'm talking about private to government, as Dr. Dhar has mentioned very clearly, there has to be a fire in the belly. There has to be a KPI for everybody in this world. If India will not do it, some other country will do it. So, especially in Middle East also, similar way, Dubai government, they work like a company. They give us all KPIs. They give us all targets to achieve. Follow all procedure. That is what we do. Because we have a global challenges. If UAE will not do it, Bahrain will do it. Bahrain will not do it, Doha will do it. Similar way, India will not do it, some other country, Indonesia will do it. So what we have to look, We have an enormous potential. In 18th century, we were 2 billion people. 19th, we were 4 billion people. 20th, we were 6 billion people. By 2050, we'll be 10 billion people. We have a very big headwind coming to us, which always disturbs me. Automation. When I look to global, my experience of 47 years all around the world, what I observe, the way the automation is taking shape in every field, it is a very dangerous sign of unemployment. Now the question is whether it is a fintech, medtech, agri-tech. Nowadays, only two things are happening. Most of the countries are producing platforms and software. And these platform and software will change the shape of education completely. We started doing IT integration from 98 onwards, because without IT integration, education cannot move further. Now, people say, when I'm getting, a student asks a simple question, when I'm getting an information from Google and YouTube, why do I require a teacher? What we explain them, what we teach in classroom, concept, analyze the concept, application of the concept, and follow up. Now, in future, in blended mode, what will happen? Concept will be explained through technology, application will be in the classroom. This is the future of the education. While taking all these factors into account, curriculum we update annually, because the world changes when you sleep and you get up. If you don't update regularly, then it is a problem. And who decide the curriculum? Employers, academic people, students. Three parties sit together and decide the curriculum, not only academics. Because in classroom, we bring three kinds of people. Number one, academically qualified. Number two, working managers, as Dr. Dhar has mentioned. Number three, renowned expert who has done enough research in that field. So when we are talking about private and public, a lot of funds are required. The best method is all private institutions by the government should be given an instruction that this percentage of seats will be allocated, either free or subsidized, to students, those who cannot afford fees. This is one way of doing it. Secondly, vocational courses will take the front seat as compared to academics, because every human being has become very impatient. When you watch television, you change many channels. Similar way, every student will say, when I'm investing this, why don't you give me job immediately? Today in US, when you take the statistics, 20% of the universities are closing down because of the overheads. So the education scenario is changing. This is my point of view as far as what is happening on education, how private and government education will move.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Puri, for giving your views. And you have given the views from the global perspective, keeping India in mind. And what Mr. Puri has mentioned, I would like to highlight few of his points. First thing, he says that he was almost the first person to say that education is business and it has to be treated as a business. Then only the education system can improve. And he has given the examples when one can go and choose, go to a 5-star hotel, he can pay more money. Why not in the education sector? And he says that the faculty should be paid the maximum because they are the persons who are going to make the correct career of the students. Secondly, he mentioned about the skill and academics should be joined. Not only the academics, now the skill is also required. And he mentioned that because today the vocational courses are superseding the academics, and the students also wants to be something, or you can say in other words, the employable. Once he will be out, he should not be facing unemployment. He has used a word that is bricks and clicks, and he says the clicks is overpowering over thing of bricks. He mentioned that now all the big giants, technology giants like Microsoft or Google, etc., they have their own institutions. So we have to be very, very competitive if we have to. He mentioned that China has closed the private education by the institutes, but like we have seen the success in India, the Bijoy's success, how they are doing. But whether it is advisable, whether it is going to kill the universities or not, that one has to see how universities, the curriculum has to be so much dynamic that it should change as per the need of today. And he says the future of education is blended. You cannot have one type of education, either online or offline. It has to be blended. And the fire in belly is required. Whether you are in a public or a private university, if the fire in belly is there, then only you can be able to sustain and can go up. He has given even that USA, 20% of universities are closing down because of no business. And he says automation is a bad sign for the employment, because once more automation, the unemployment will be there. So he has given many things about the education practicality, because he is running his own universities and he has seen from insides. So one says the horse's mouth. He is the person who has seen the difficulties, the challenges, and the solutions. So he says whether it's a private or public university, one has to change the outlook. And once they will change the outlook, then only we will be able to give the quality education. Thank you very much, Mr. Kamal Puri, for giving your views. Now, I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he is Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal. Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal is the former Professor of Marketing, Innovation and Management, IIM Lucknow, XLRI Jamshedpur, and California State University, USA. He is President of Indo-Gulf Management Association. Welcome, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal, on our show. Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal, you have heard Professor Dr. Dhar as well as Mr. Kamal Puri. They have given their views, and very, very strongly. They have given their views clearly, because Professor Dhar, as an academician, as an administrator, he has given his views. But Mr. Puri, being an entrepreneur himself, set up the universities, he has given his views. Now, we would like to know, because you being a professor as well as a management person, marketing person, so we would like to know from you, private versus public universities. Prof. Mohanlal Agarwal, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Goel. And also, I want to thank Mr. Puri for giving the views of an entrepreneur into the business of education. I would like to pick up from where Mr. Puri started, and when he said that he startled the audience and the people around him when he said that education is my business, and why they were so much surprised and why they were so much shocked to that extent. I think it is because that many people have not understood that business can also be non-profit business. It cannot be just a profit business. So business is not equivalent to profitability or commerce. Business simply means professionalism. Business means that you are doing things in a very, very clear way so that the beneficiaries get the advantage of it in the best possible manner. So if he had said that that business or education is my business from the professional point of view, nobody would have minded from that point of view. Now, the difference between the private and public, which my friend Upendra ji or Dr. Dhar was mentioning. If we look into these two universities systems and keep the purpose of them as uniform, then there are some very clear differences between them. And by the way, I agree with what he said in terms of the emergence of the profile of the university, but still it will not eliminate that it is a private sector university, or this university is in the private sector and this university is in the public sector. Within those particular sectors, all those formats which we mentioned, that is a research university, skill university, which is also a format of practice university, and a blended university will come. But the fact of the matter is still is that they will be considered two different worlds. Different world will be private and second world will be public. And the motivations will be different. And those motivations will have to be brought in the context of where they come from. In other words, we have to see the origin of those words rather than just the words that we are talking about. So what are the excellence drivers, or how do we make a university, whether private or public, excellent and keep it on the path of excellence? Number one, in the case of private universities, vision becomes more important than the mission. Vision of taking the university to a particular place where it should be as per the entrepreneur, as per the educational entrepreneur. He or she sees it the way they want to see and then take the university there. In the case of the public universities, mission becomes more important than the vision. And that is the reason why the differences which you saw from Professor Dhar become important. That in the case of public universities, because mission is more important, so many dead words, many non-performing people, less performing people, and people coming with some kind of lower expectations can, and also low performance standards can happen. So this is the second example, that mission and vision. The second is that in the case of public universities, bureaucratization takes over, while in the case of the private universities, centralization happens. Usually we have seen the difference between centralization and decentralization. But I would like to say that in the case of public university, it is more protocol, much more procedure, policy, all those kind of things. While in the case of the private university, the voice of the entrepreneur, the voice of the people along with the entrepreneur matter. And then the processes are designed or redesigned or customized or tailored to the wish of that particular thing. So centralization and bureaucratization. In both the cases, I'm afraid very few universities have been able to bring in what is known as a decentralization. They are just struggling between these two, bureaucratization and centralization. The third very important difference is that in the case of public universities, the core remains their priority. And what is that core? That core is academics, the academic delivery. While in the case of the private universities, the support system becomes more important. The learning environment becomes more important rather than the learning itself. So you will see facilities are much more in the private sector. Many more, I would say, updation will take place in terms of making university enjoyable as well as facilitating the learning environment into that particular system. So they spend more time, and I have to say this with all respect, that they put more money into making it look better than they are. While in the case of the public universities, they are essentially better. Essentially better means in the case of academic core. And that is the reason the same core, when it comes out of the public universities, they do wonders when they come into the private universities. But I would like to know a reverse example from anyone. And there is no reverse example where anyone who was great in public universities also did very well in the case of private universities. The private person who was great in private universities, he did very well in public universities. Now suddenly the entire thing changes. Why? Because the way you are thinking is not the way it happens in the case of the public universities. So either they are shunted out, or they quit, or they resign, or something else exactly happens. And I'll just give you one example to make that thing, because there is no reverse migration at this particular moment. That is to say, from private to public. But there are a lot of migrations, like Dhar said, that he came from public universities to private sector. He cannot give any example from private sector to public where he did wonders. Now, and I will give you just one example of Mr. Rusi Modi, who used to be a mercurial and magnificent leader of Tata Steel. And he was a successful person. And I have seen him up close and personal, like, because he and I met a number of times when I was at XLRI Jamshedpur. But the same gentleman, so successful, when he came to Air India, he became a disaster. And within months, he was shunted out. What happened there? If you were such a great manager, such a great visionary, then you should have been good in the public system also, but you couldn't. Why? Because you came from a private system to the public system. So this is another myth which I wanted to highlight, where all the people are here, that it is difficult to understand why private universities haven't created the leaders for public universities, but why public universities have created so many leaders for the private universities. Now, this is another point which I wanted to bring out. Maybe it's a food for thought. The next point, which is very important, is that in the case of private universities, the decision making is much faster and much customer oriented. While in the case of the public universities, the decision making is much more, I would say, slow, because there is a lot of scrutiny. Because there is a lot of democratic scrutiny. It's a democratic world. And therefore, everybody is interested to see that all stakeholders are brought into the place before you make a decision. But in the case of private universities, I have said it, and you have to follow it. And if you do not follow it, we know what is the consequence of what we both are saying. So as a result, the decision making, which is in the private sector, goes much more faster than it goes into this. So how do we take care of these differences and be on the path of excellence? Number one, I believe that there should be a uniform realization that we are in the business of education. We are not in the education. And if we make this distinction very clear to us, then we are not creating any controversy. We are not making any startling statement. What we are saying is very clearly that we believe that this should also be done in a professional manner and with the same way that any business would run, or any business should run. If not would, but at least should run. Why? Where there is a very clear purpose, there is a very clear process, and there is also a very clear set of resources to achieve that purpose within the vision of that particular organization. Second point, which I would like to say, and which will make it very, that let us try to understand that information has already been replaced by analysis. That's where Puri Sahab is absolutely right, that information has been totally replaced by insights. Google cannot give the insights. It can only provide information. Google cannot provide analysis. It can provide analytical inputs. So therefore, when we go from information to insight to analysis, then clearly there is a scope for practicing what you are saying, for discussing what you are saying, for debating what you are saying. And you means instructor. And who is talking about it? The student. So therefore, cases, simulations, practices, real-time happenings, they should be the core of it. In other words, it should not be learning. It should be learning by doing education. And when you do learning by doing, clearly you are talking about those tools which help you learn by doing. We have a theory which is called Bloom's taxonomy. And in that particular Bloom's taxonomy, there are certain goals which are on the lower level, and there are some which are at the higher level. At the higher level is exactly practicing, analysis, reflection. Those should be the methods of teaching and learning, whether it is a private university or it is a public university, rather than whether you call it research or practice or any other kind of thing. Those things are only saying. For instance, what a research professor does. A research professor gives more time to doing research, and a practice professor more time doing for corporate training, for corporate interaction, for corporate workshops. But that doesn't mean he doesn't do the research. If you see McKinsey is the greatest, biggest research organization, even though it is known as a consulting firm. On the other hand, if you see the organization like Harvard or Stanford, they are known both for academic as well as practicing research. They are receiving people from McKinsey's and others in order to train them, teach them. So point of the matter, which I'm trying to say, here is that we need to create a purpose of the organization very clear. And then only we should talk about various differences between private and public. I think purpose of education is the same as purpose of a business. And that purpose is wealth creation, value creation, and wealth maximization, value maximization. The same thing is for the university. And if that particular purpose is taken care of, then in that case, there's nothing wrong in saying that we are in the business of education rather than education is my business, or rather than private university and public university. That way, it will create a very, very harmonious and much, much more enduring. That is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Goel, for giving
Thank you very
me this
much.
opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, for giving your views. And what Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal has mentioned, although he has cleared everything, but few things which I would like to say. He says that business can be non-profit. He says, yes, education is a business, as Mr. Puri says, but the business, one should understand the business can be of non-profit, or whatsoever the money has been generated through that business, if it will be utilized for the benefit of that particular business or the education, then it is not a profit-making business. It is a non-profit, but utilizing and giving the quality education. And he says private and public remains. It is not that it will go away like Professor Dr. Dhar. So he disagree with him in that way. He says private and public universities will remain, whether there will be research or the teachers training, etc., etc. And he says the private is providing more facilities, while the public is for the more academics. And he has given one example of Mr. Rusi Modi. He says Mr. Rusi Modi was very successful in Tata's in Jamshedpur, but he failed in the Air India. And he says no one can explain. But what I personally feel, with my limited knowledge, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, because of the bureaucratic setup in India, any good manager from anywhere in the world will be proved to be failure when they will come in a public domain, when the public on the public's PSU, etc. Because so much bureaucratic, for every permission you have to go, while in, as you mentioned, that there is a decision making is with the private. They are very dynamic. They can take a decision, overnight decisions, which he would have enjoyed at Jamshedpur, which he could not join when he was in the Air India headquarters at Mumbai. But that is a part of the thing. But what he says is, he has mentioned that decision making is slower in public. So it is the answer of his this and learn by doing. He says, and the purpose of education is clear for both of them, the wealth creation and giving education. If both things are clear, then the education as a business is not a taboo. One should take it positively, and then the difference will be there, but we have to see how it can be resolved amicably among them, so that there should not be a distinction which is having nowadays. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. My now question goes to Mr. Kamal Puri. Mr. Kamal Puri, when private universities, everybody, even you said, they are dynamic, they can take a decision, they can change the things, they can think far ahead, even from the public universities, because there is a bureaucratic setup, etc., etc. Why? There are no private university in top 500 ranking in the world from India. I'm talking from India, because I know the private universities are number 1 and 2 or 3 in the first 5, whether it's a Harvard or Stanford University. But in India, if you see the case, it was if I remember, I think with the last time or sometime with Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, the IISc Bangalore and 2 more IITs were there. Otherwise, not a single private university in top 500. Even in 1,000, I think 2 universities or 2 higher private institutions. So when this is the, but as a university founder, and you have, what positive suggestions you would like to give because whatsoever has happened and what's happening. But according to you, with your own experience, what do you think the government should do, or what do you think the private players should do to improve the quality of the private universities as well as the public universities in India? Mr. Kamalpuri, please. Please unmute. Please unmute. Please unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let me give you a practical example. So even in the United Arab Emirates, there are two education systems. Right? One is by state and second is by federal government. And federal government standards are the tallest in the world. Let me tell you why tallest in the world. For example, the accredited agencies which they brought, there are 7 accredited agencies in US. And NESAC is the toughest agency. They brought this agency in 2000 and put up the standards. Now, in business education, the toughest agency which gives an accredited institution is ASCSB. When ASCSB started their Singapore operation, I remember 20 years back, and they moved to India, and they want to accredited institutions. There were so many conditions, like a different diversity is required. Different nationality is required. So I was in the meeting and it was discussed that how India was justifying diversity. They said South Indian is different than the North Indian and North Indian is different than the East Indians. So this is the way they were showing their diversity. The most important emphasis of every accredited agency is the research. And research is also depend on what type of research and which journals are you putting and what is your rating of that. When we are talking about the rating of the institution, even UAE will start now the rating of the institutions. There are 2 aspects. One is the academic, second is the services. Now, sometimes some of the British organization will say we are number 2 in the world. For what? For services, not for education. So, previously, Indian government were thinking to come out with the accredited agencies so that these accredited agencies can control the whole education system and put down the criteria. And for your information, in all universities in the Western world, the owners, promoters cannot sit in their office. It's not allowed. Why it is not allowed? Because they will cut the corners. So promoters cannot be chairman of the board. These are the system checks. Like in education, when we are talking about every accredited agency will give an emphasis on what are the outcomes. The day you started the class till end, please show us. So what we do, we managed everything through technology and we are putting AI. Let's take example, you want to teach a course on marketing. What are the topics you are going to cover? How will you cover? What are your learning outcomes? How will you measure this learning outcome? These sheets are submitted on each semester basis. So accredited agencies will look into your governance, number 1. They will look to your curriculum. They will look to your learning support resources. They will look to your risk management. All aspects are taken care. And most important is your human resources. If they get 1 or 2 complaints, your ranking is out. Because what is education? If you remember in olden days, people used to teach under the tree. So buildings, resources will not be important. It is the man who is the most important, who delivers. That person has to be happy, committed, and doing enough research so that he can bring that experience into the classroom of his research. Yes, India now becoming a part of a global education system, because if you see in US, our medical degrees were not recognized. And now in Canada, our medical degrees are not recognized, for example. But what is happening now?
construction
India
company.
has, from 1990, I am fighting that India should allow foreign education to enter into Indian market. No, we
Channel
want,
click.
when Mr. Arjun
Nande.
Singh was there, and Mr. Arjun Singh said, we want our university to go abroad, but we don't want foreign
Fifth.
education to
Sixth
come
hour.
here.
Sixth.
I said,
This is
no,
the sixth,
you put down the
PUC fifth.
quota
Fifth.
on that.
Okay.
Now the foreign education will come. Let's take a US university operating in collaborative with the institution in India and awarding a medical degree. How they can say we don't
And
recognize this degree?
ಗೊತ್ತಾണ് sir.
So when you are talking about the rating, now
ah.
in the next decade, you will see a drastic change coming in Indian education system, because Indian will be doing a lot of collaboration on education.
Okay,
And
thank you very much,
camera
Mr.
pressing
Puri,
will
for
come
giving
on.
your views.
YouTube
Now, my
link
last
undo.
question
No,
goes to
Nikhil.
Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal.
ಅದು
Professor
ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ
Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, you have heard what Mr. Puri says.
ಪಾಡ್ವೆ
Do you think, with the present scenario in India, with the climate of India, when he
Nikhil.
says that let the foreign university to come,
Nikhil,
NEP
ಎಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀಯಪ್ಪ?
also says the foreign university will come. But do you think
ದೈವಾರಾಧನೆ
the foreign universities with the
sorry.
present climate, when we are banning the non-veg eating, when we are banning the
Ashwina.
smoking, the drinking and all those things, how the faculties and all those from the foreign universities would like to come in that atmosphere in India? Number one. Number two is mentioned about the accreditation thing. Do you think with the corrupt policies of Indian bureaucracy, this accreditation which is happening, I think we need not to explain, is going to help? He has given example of UAE, yes, because that's a very strict thing. He says the promoter cannot be the chairman. While in India, the promoter, whether whatsoever is, he would like to be the chairman, then that's why he's become the promoter. Do you think, time is only 1 minute. Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. Please unmute.
Thank you very much. No, I think you are absolutely right, and I will try to be as brief as possible within the time limit. Number one is that anyone who goes to any other country has to follow the terms, conditions, customs of the host country. So in UAE also, when these universities come, they have to follow the rules, customs, and everything of UAE, and still they are doing very well. So therefore, why should we worry that with our restrictions, these universities will not work in India? They will work, because as I said, education has a self-correction mechanism, and therefore they can correct themselves very quickly because they are educators. They are not, so that is number one. Number two is that even in India also, the owners cannot sit on the board as a chancellor, or at the most, they may be honorable chancellor or something like that, but they will not be in the executive board of that as far as NAC and NAB is concerned. So that part is very clear. The third very important point is that how do we have them and let them do? I believe that this education policy, as you also noted, they will allow, but they do not want those universities to come here who are very, very big on support system rather than the education core system, which very correctly, Mr. Puri said that they say as number one, number two in customer service, customer satisfaction, like that. They want them to be great in the core business of education, which is knowledge creation, knowledge delivery, knowledge diffusion, knowledge application. So hopefully this particular thing will answer your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's be very optimistic. We will feel that the day will come when Indian universities will also be in the top 10. When it will come, it will all depends. Thank you very much for giving such a good views. So viewers, you have seen the distinction is there between private and public universities, but the purpose is same. They want to give the education. It all depends on us, the civil society also, how we would like to take the education, how we'd like to support the education system. We are only looking from the government side. Why we are not seeing our own side? We have to take this in our own stride. After all, it's the future of our own children. If we will give the best to the universities, the best atmosphere to the university, we give the best respect to the faculties and see to it that the government should pay more and more to the faculties, without any hue and cry from the civil society, definitely our education system can improve. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor to bring to you every day is someone who is an achiever in the evening program of Kal Aaj aur Kal Lal Goel Ke Sang. And today my chief guest is Captain Louis George Marpet. He is the former captain, Indian Navy basketball team, head coach, Indian women's wheelchair basketball team. He is joining from Mumbai at 4:30 p.m. So he will narrate his own life journey about how he has become so big and how he can become an achiever in that and a role model for the youth. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kamal Puri. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. And thank you very much, Professor Dr. Dhar, for joining us and giving your views. And thank you all the viewers for watching our show. Thank you very much.
And we also wish very, very well to Dr. Khosla, who is in the hospital.
Yes. All the best wishes to him. Thank you.